One of the classes I'm in, it's called Diversity in the U.S. Just about as woke as you could ever imagine. And, just what, Monday, Wednesday, one of my peers, she was like, there's LGBTQ representation now, which is good, but it's not enough because now there's not enough characters that are LGBTQ. And my professor looked at me and she was like, Joseph, what do you think about this? And I said, well, professor, times are changing. Before that, I watched this movie or this show with my neighbors, and it was really good. It was really, really good. It was amazing. It was a great show. It wasn't about war or killing or violence or the end of the world or ghosts or anything. It was a petty show about petty neighbors being petty to each other and having to wonder and guess what the other neighbors are doing. And that was fantastic. That was great. That was fantastic. It was awesome. It was just everything was just so petty. I loved it. It was drama. It was very subtle drama. I'd never seen anything like it. And of course, there was like a plot that involved fucking elites taking blood from children, and it was a wow. The second episode, of course, there's someone who's not the same color as everyone else, so there's a diversity block. And then his face looks like that kid from Stranger Things, so there's another diversity block. I don't know what that is. I haven't seen that except on Netflix. That like almost like VCR, like VHS tape slot kind of eye thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it denotes, but that's another diversity slot. And then the fucking final nail in the coffin. The final nail in the coffin for that show. My neighbors didn't like it. It's a slow, subtle little thing. My neighbors didn't like it. The second episode, he gets in the pool with this teenager, and he's like, she's like, we should kiss, and then he's like, well, I'm older than you, and he was older than her, and she was a teenager, and she's like, well, that makes it better, and then they did it. So he basically said, if you do this, you'll be a pedophile, and he's like, oh, when you put it like that. So I hadn't really watched anything like that. The Last Kingdom opens up. The first episode is like almost too intense for me. It's really brutal. Okay, I'll just say that. Like, basically the whole thing is the Kingsmen. They all get tricked. They all get hella tricked because they were supposed to hold their reserves behind. Uhtred's dad, I believe, was up ahead actually fighting, and the other kings were supposed to hold their reserves behind, but they're like, oh no, we're just gonna fucking rout them right here. We're gonna break them. And then the reserves get fucking flanked. They were there to stop the main force from getting flanked, but the reserves got flanked, and they got surrounded, and then they got like pressed in by the shield wall, and that, I mean, just once that happens, like I have seldom seen or felt terror or horror nearly to that extent. Like I watched The Last Kingdom by myself initially, and I was like, this is too brutal for me, and I stopped watching. The rest of the show is not nearly as brutal as that first episode, but it's wonderful. It's great. It's like a buy-in, actually. It's like a buy-in because you have to be willing. You have to be willing to like stomach just the sheer like violence. You have to be willing to stomach the sheer violence in order to actually like play. Like, it's like a buy-in. Okay, so the rest of the show, like it's It's very it's very similar to Game of Thrones, except where Game of Thrones ends up getting way too magic. There's no magic in the Last Kingdom. That's basically the difference. Um, Ragnar's whole journey, like from going from like Christian to pagan to like some weird like hybrid in between. It's awesome. It really. It's like he had to question his faith the whole time. The whole thing is about faith. The whole series is about faith, and that's what makes it great. He had to like figure out where his loyalties lie, and the only reason that England was ever united is because there was a fusion. There was a fusion like did I call him Ragnar? I meant to say Uhtred. Ragnar was like his dad or something. But he had to choose between being a pagan and a Christian the whole time, and that's what made him more powerful than the pagans or the Christians. You could see both sides. At one point, there's like a plot. There's like a plot to like kill all the pagans because they like there's an assassination and the pagan. It's a great show, and there's a lot of arcs. It does depreciate with quality because there's like 7 seasons, but it's highly watchable. It's highly watchable. Uhtred has so many girls. It's really quite preposterous. I think everyone would agree that his main girl is that weird like gypsy lady. The cast is great, the characters are great, but now time for the movie, right? The movie was fantastic. Okay, the movie's great because it was the reverse of the first episode. Uhtred's power, like his main like where his strength comes from. Yeah, he's a great swordsman, all that, but he has the strategy, he has the strategizing. He's not just a bloodthirsty killer, which most of the pagans are. It's a great battle. Like it starts off the battle, he's like, "Men, when I say give one step," and they start stepping backward, and so the barbarians, their bloodlust is all up. They're like, "Oh, they're retreating," but he's funneling the entire force into this tree line. And then there's a dirty trick. He has a dirty trick. There's the caltrops that just get littered out there, and the caltrop scene is great. I've never fucking seen caltrops used in film or cinema, and if I had, they'd never been like that. I always thought it was like I tripped or like owie, but no, it goes right through their foot. It was great, and they didn't see it coming. And basically Uhtred, it's a reverse of the first episode. He gets the other side to commit their reserves so that he can commit his reserves. And there was also, for the first time in the series, there was a new tactic shown, which was fantastic. It was called like a wedge or something like that. And so the fucking barbarians, they just like they push everyone aside away from the shield wall, and they make like this where are my loyalties? Where are my loyalties? Well, that's the thing is, of course, like of course, where are my loyalty? Well, of course, that isle couldn't just be barbarian land forever, okay? Because the first episode shows you that it's not a land of peace. It's a land of terror and horror, and in any second, your Hamlet could just get fucking wrecked. The whole thing is basically like we want our invaders invading from over there. We don't want our invaders here, okay? And the thing about the pagans is they can't really develop. They can't really develop besides this raider sort of thing. The land will never be capitalized on. It'll never be developed. The Christians can do this, okay? The Christians can do this. However, they are just so misled by their greed. Like it seems like the Christians, in having that singular unification with God, anything down the line, any man down the line can just sour it for the rest of everyone beneath them. And on top of that, the Christians are mostly meek in this show. I mean, just like the regular Christian people, they're just like scrawny peasants. Whereas it seems like the barbarians, just every single barbarian is just more powerful and stronger. But you know, a big thing is the Christians all wear mail and the barbarians don't, and that's never really like discussed. Like Uhtred actually, they actually give him a whole male suit, and he's like, no, I don't want that. And it's kind of misleading because like I've been hit, like I've had like a grown man like swing basically like a baseball bat at me, and I'm wearing armor, and it wasn't mail, it was actually plate, but it just made such a difference. Like I didn't even feel like it could have gone on all day and I would have been fine. And so I want to point out that the Last Kingdom doesn't do a good job of that. It kind of just like, it's like, oh, this barbarian is gonna fight this guy, and if one of them stabs the other, it's over. But I'll say it focused more on the strategic than on the tactical, and I can appreciate that, just because like I don't think at any point I had to sit through a 20-minute CGI battle. I don't think that ever happens. I think every single battle is actually actors, which is great. But it doesn't, and even then, it doesn't get muddled down to just like 5 scenes of just like chopping back and forth. The Yeah, but there's also like a huge amount of greed too. There's also a huge amount of, there's a bunch of like, it's a pretty prominent theme that the church is constantly, well, I mean, I guess this is kind of what goes what I was saying before, is the Mongol, the barbarians don't capitalize, but the church does. It's always capitalizing, and it's almost insane. Like they want to make like a church out of gold, or some insane fucking thing, like some insane like beacon of hope. And the barbarians just, they saw that, they're like, that's great, and they waited for it to get finished, and they just immediately sacked it. But I mean, I don't know. I guess that plays into a larger narrative, because then everyone knows that church got attacked. Barbarians or pagans? It's hard. It's really hard for me to say. Or sorry, Christians or pagans? It's hard for me to say, but yeah, definitely Team Christian, just because. I mean, yeah, I mean that's the whole point of the show, is making the world civilized. But so there's just this weird. I mean, to answer the question once more, there's just this weird kind of air. This the Christians and the pagans almost tolerate each other. Like there's like, it's really weird having them like act simultaneously next to each other. It's bizarre for me, because I feel like, for me, like outside the show, I feel like they would just kill each other on sight immediately. But maybe it wasn't like that. Um, I feel like historically, I don't know that much about all that, but I feel like it's pretty spot on. But in that, and then see that's kind of the thing, is the fucking Witcher. The Witcher show is so bad, okay, and I'm gonna tell you this. I think every knight in medieval times was probably white. I'm gonna say this. I'm just gonna say that almost everyone in Europe of notable disposition was probably born there. And so there's these things out of place in The Witcher that just completely just throw things off. And so I talk to my neighbors. I'm like, hey, you know what? It's great. This movie came out way after the show, not way after the show, but it came out after the show. And I'm like, I'm just glad there's no Black Vikings. Okay. And I ate my fucking words. I absolutely ate my words, because the movie starts off really bad. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. It starts off slow, and I'm like, fuck, none of the magic, because like the tall guy with the bad haircut, he was just immediately just like spouting off exposition. That's all he did the whole time, is just say what's going on. And he just he had this weird sort of like deluded look on his face. I'm like, fuck, this character isn't a character anymore. He's a plot device. And lo and behold, after he was done spouting out all his exposition, they fucking executed him, because the whole show, he's like the most loyal dude. Like he basically, like, he's in love with this princess, but he knows she can't reciprocate, but he's still loyal to her, and he's not a big, sour, mean, idiot about it. And I is it simping or is it I don't know. I don't know. But he established this. He stopped talking like himself. There's this like slew of new characters that are just coming in. I'm like, fuck, oh man. But it gets better. It gets way better. If I like the second act is great. I wish they would just not had any. It's just showing what everyone's doing. I guess they have to establish where everyone is, but it doesn't go anywhere. My qualm with this, right? And I have a lot of really great things to share and tell about this show, and it's there's a battle in my heart right now because the whole thing, the whole show is based on a gay affair. That's it. It's the king. There's it never even explains who the fucking guy is. There's just some guy having sex with the king, and so this is an actual scene. This is an actual scene where after they're done, and they kind of like show it, not too much, which I'm really glad. I mean, honestly, I think no, I'd still be upset if they had just suggested it heavily. Yeah, I'd still be upset. So the king, he's like, what if I go to hell? Will I go to hell for doing this? This is a sin. And the gay evil guy, because he is evil, he is gay and evil. I guess I'll give Netflix that. At least the gay evil guy is evil. He's just sent to subvert. He's like, well, if you do a lot of good deeds, it'll outweigh that. And it's just the dumbest fucking the kid's dad or grandfather, whoever the fuck, like the first king of the show, he was so like religiously devout, and I am glad that this actor, he looks like that first king. It's a spitting image, and it's great. He looks like that. He has the same bearing. I can tell that it's a child actor trying to emulate something, but he's doing it great. It's like Harry Potter level of like child acting, even though the kid's like an adolescent or a teenager. And so the gay evil guy, he's like, yeah, well, if you expand your domain, you can just like make up for it, and you can balance your sins or whatever. And my professor, she asked me in the diversity class, she's like, Joseph, like, what do you think about all this? And all I can say is times are changing. I feel so old now because I'm just repeating myself and I'm repeating all the things that the old people say. But I'm in this position now, right, where there's this good show, like this movie, I think is good. It just has this homosexual element. Before, what Netflix was doing is they were just slapping gay on anything and it would sell. But now this next step, it's really quite clever. It's really like just like that show that I talked about at the beginning of the stream about the neighbors with just like, oh, it's very interesting. It's a very cool show. It's very fun to watch, but it just has like just a little bit of pedophilia, a little bit of race mixing.